and play on 2nd and 10. That's his youth right there.
Tagovailoa trying to make up for it. Fires to the end zone. Touchdown! Alabama wins!
So today I'll be filming my college football conference championship predictions video. So starting with the SEC championship, I've got the LSU Tigers versus the Georgia Bulldogs. So I've got LSU at 11-1 overall and 8-0 in the conference, and Georgia at 11-1 overall and 7-1 in the conference. And Texas, I also have it 11-1 overall and 7-1 in the conference, but I have their one loss coming against Georgia, so that's why Georgia would go to the SEC championship. But this would be a great game if it happens. Both teams, I think, to get here are going to have to improve their run game. But LSU, I think, will have a big quarterback advantage in this game. And even though I like Georgia's wide receivers, I think LSU is even more loaded at wide receiver. And I think LSU can handle Georgia at the line of scrimmage on both sides. Now, Georgia, I think, is a little bit deeper at linebacker than LSU is, but LSU's a combination at linebacker of Whit Weeks and Harold Perkins. Not even Georgia has a linebacker combination as good as that. Those are two possible first round linebackers. And their secondaries, I think, are pretty similar. Now, I think Kirby Smart is a much better head coach than Brian Kelly is. But LSU is so loaded this year that except for the offensive coordinator, Brian Kelly is probably the weakest part of the team, and he's a top 10 head coach in the country. And there's only three teams that Kirby Smart has a losing record to since he's been at Georgia, and LSU is one of them. And I just don't think that Georgia is going to win the SEC 2 years in a row. It's gotten to where it's almost impossible to do that. So I'm going with the LSU Tigers to win the SEC championship. So now the Big Ten championship. I've got the Oregon Ducks versus the Michigan Wolverines. Oregon, I've got it 11-1 overall and 8-1 in the conference, and Michigan at 10-2 overall and 8-1 in the conference. So Michigan would get in the Big Ten championship because they will have beaten Ohio State, who I have with the exact same overall and conference record as Michigan. And Penn State, I have with two losses coming to Oregon and Ohio State. So at quarterback, both teams at quarterbacks, Dante Moore for Oregon and Bryce Underwood for Michigan were five-star quarterbacks. Now, right now, Oregon's Dante Moore has a lot more experience in college than Bryce Underwood at Michigan does because he played some as a starter at UCLA, and Bryce Underwood is a true freshman. But at this point, that won't really matter because Bryce Underwood will pretty much be a sophomore. He will have played a whole regular season. But I can't say who will have the quarterback advantage in this game if it does happen. But Oregon is one of those teams, like Ohio State, that is always getting wide receivers drafted in the NFL, and Michigan is not one of those teams. But Oregon, I think, will be weaker at wide receiver this year than they usually are. Now, their best wide receiver, Evan Stewart, even though he had an off-season injury that's going to keep him out for at least most of the season, there's a good chance that he would be able to play. At this point. And at running back, they're pretty similar. Oregon's Mackay Hughes that they brought in from Tulane, and Michigan's Justice Haynes that they brought in from Alabama. I think each have a chance to be one of college football's best running backs this season. And at the line of scrimmage, I'd say Oregon has a little bit of an advantage offensively, and Michigan has a advantage by a little bit defensively because I think they're deeper at the defensive line than Oregon is. But Oregon probably does have the best defensive lineman between these two teams. Mateo Uyunglele. Here's a clip of a sack by him.
They will throw. Lock feeling the pressure.
And Oregon, I would say, is a little bit deeper at linebacker than Michigan is. And I'd say they're pretty similar in the secondary. But it really comes down to coaching for me with this one. I trust Dan Lanning and his staff at Oregon much more than I do Sharon Moore and his staff at Michigan. Lanning has two of the best coordinators in the country, and Sharon Moore, I'm not at all convinced right now that he's a very good head coach. Because while I know the season did end well for Michigan, and they lost a whole lot from that national championship winning team the year before. They still had enough talent on their roster, especially on the defensive side, to where you would have thought they could have done better than 8-5. So I'm going with the Oregon Ducks to repeat as Big Ten champions. So now the Big 12 championship. I've got the Baylor Bears versus the Texas Tech Red Raiders. So Baylor, I've got it 10-2 overall and 8-1 in the conference, and Texas Tech at 10-2 overall and 7-2 in the conference. So Baylor, I think, is going to be a team similar to those Oklahoma teams under Lincoln Riley that had a great offense and a bad defense. And those Oklahoma teams won several Big 12 championships. So there is a chance that Baylor could do that. But I think that Texas Tech is a more complete team than Baylor. They're going to have a good offense too, and I think they're going to have a good defense, especially in the front seven. I think Texas Tech is going to have one of the best front sevens in college football this season. So I'm going to go with the Texas Tech Red Raiders to win the Big 12 championship. So now the ACC championship. I've got the Clemson Tigers versus the Duke Blue Devils. Clemson, I've got it 11-1 overall and 7-1 in the conference, and Duke, I've got it 11-1 overall and 7-1 in the conference. So Clemson and Duke, I think will have really good defenses. So I think this will be a lower scoring game. And Clemson, though, is the more complete team than Duke because they have a good offense too. And this isn't like the Big 12 championship with Baylor and Texas Tech, where the two teams have similar talent levels. Clemson is also a much more talented team than Duke is. Here's a clip of Clemson's quarterback Cade Klubnik throwing a touchdown pass to his best wide receiver, Antonio Williams.
Klubnik dumps it off. Wide open, middle of the field. Antonio Williams into
Duke, I think, will be good enough defensively to keep Clemson under 30 points, probably. But Duke, I think, is going to have a hard time even getting to 20 points. Coaching in this game, something interesting is Clemson's new defensive coordinator, Tom Allen, was the one who replaced Duke's now head coach Manny Diaz as Penn State's defensive coordinator last year, and he did almost as good of a job with Penn State's defense last year that Diaz did in 2023, and I would trust Dabo Swinney a lot more right now as a head coach than I would Manny Diaz because he's got so much more experience as a head coach. I would have to go with Clemson to win the ACC. But there's also a chance that it could be Clemson against Miami, going by my predictions, because I have Miami with only one conference loss, but I have them with two overall losses, and Miami and Duke don't play, it would go to whoever's higher ranked, and I decided to go with Duke for it because they would have the better overall record. But that will be it with this video. Please subscribe. Thanks for watching. And I'll be filming my college football playoff predictions video tomorrow.